What if the hardest things you've ever gone through weren't just obstacles to overcome, but part of a much bigger story? Today's guest is Peter Bailey, author of The Epic of You, and someone who has walked a path far outside the ordinary. From childhood trauma and family dysfunction to addiction, heartbreak, near death experiences, and incredible adventures spanning the globe. Peter has spent a lifetime discovering what it means to turn adversity into purpose. Welcome back to Shit Creek Survivors. We share real stories of people getting stuck up shit creek, the paddles they used to get out, and hope for anyone stuck up their own shit creek right now. In this episode, we are talking about the hero's journey and why every one of us is living our own version of it. We'll discuss overcoming shame, self-doubt, finding hope in difficult seasons, the lessons Peter learned through recovery, practical tools for building resilience, and how our greatest struggles often become our greatest teachers. If you've ever wondered whether there's any meaning to the challenges you're facing right now, this conversation is for you. So let's jump in and hear Peter Bailey's story. Peter, thank you so much for being on Shit Creek Survivors today. If you would kind of introduce yourself to the audience, let us know a little bit about you.
Yeah. Hey, Cameron. Great to be here. Well, I'll say where I am now in Minnesota, president of a leadership and strategic planning firm. Been in this line of work 45 years
Wow.
and lived, traveled 50 countries, passionate about transformational leadership development. That's the
Awesome.
work I do.
That's awesome.
Going way back in the spirit of what creek happened to you.
Yeah.
I loved talking to you prior to this call, but I was a kid, like a lot of people, brought up in a loving but relatively dysfunctional family. And even as a young kid, my dad was a Navy pilot off aircraft carriers.
Wow.
And I was born into him just having an aneurysm. So
Oh, okay.
before I was born, he was in a VA hospital recovering. And I kind of came to sort of consciousness thinking, what's wrong? Something's wrong. And it's kind of like your dog, like when you're mad, it knows.
Right.
And when
Yeah.
it's stressful, the dog knows. Well, as a
Yep.
little kid, I kind of absorbed all this family stress. My mom was a nurse,
Okay.
kind of figuring out how to take care of my dad and me and my sister. And I just absorbed all of it. And
Yeah.
quickly into that, I sort of got into this. How do I make my mom happy? How do I make everything okay? Man of the
Right.
house at like 3 years old kind of thing. And
Wow.
the dysfunction of that began to sort of blossom. Perfect storm. There's a lot of people with worse stories than I have, but I imagine there's a lot of people who can sort of connect with the fact that, death by 1,000 cuts,
Yeah.
you get
Mm-hmm.
one little thing and then another little thing and then another little thing. And it all began to sort of feed this sense of inadequacy. I wasn't enough.
Okay.
And also that codependency of how do I make other people happy? And I
Mm.
very early lost the ability to know, like, what's my favorite color? I don't know. What's yours? Okay, I'll agree,
Ah.
And so I wrote this book, The Epic of You, after many years of living sort of a dysfunctional life. As an early kid, my first drugging and drinking experience was 13 years old with a Boone's Farm Strawberry Hill,
Oh my
and it
gosh. I
changed
think
everything.
I think Boone's Farm was actually one of my earlier experiences with alcohol. Yeah, like at 15 or something like that.
Right,
Yeah.
13, and it was like, boom. So all those feelings of inadequacy, and I wasn't enough, and I was a risk taker.
Mm-hmm.
If you watch my TED Talk, you'll see the actual bridge, but I was a 7th grader, and I was dared to cross the outside of a chain link fence over a 6-lane highway, and I did it,
I
and
thought
I
you were gonna say over water at least.
yeah, no, over speeding vehicles,
Jeez.
and, uh, and partway across, I lost my grip. I mean, like, I wasn't able to hold on anymore.
Right.
And I think of that as my early faith experience of, okay, I need some help here, and I kind of got connected to like, oh my gosh, I don't know what did I do,
Mm-hmm.
and got into a situation after I did finally cross the bridge. You'll see the bridge in the video, but I just was doing anything I could to be accepted by my peers.
Yeah.
Shoplifting, early drugs and alcohol. And then my mom, who was clearly a single parent, but a really good person, said, "You need a private school because what you're doing is not working." So I
Yeah.
went to a private school for a while, and that kind of cleaned me up a little bit, learned Latin and Greek and, required sports, but I was still trying to fit in. And
Hmm.
I even adopted an English accent. I know that's some of your background too, but I, saw
Yeah.
the Artful Dodger in Oliver, and I thought, all right, that's me. I can do that, And so
Yeah.
shoplifting and just it was anything I could do to get out of my experience.
Right.
And then world travel picked up, and my mom said, "Hey, let's go to India." And so at 16 years old, we drove from Frankfurt, Germany, Austria, Yugoslavia, Bulgaria, Turkey, Iran, Afghanistan, India, and Nepal,
Whoa.
1976. And going through Iran and Afghanistan at that age was amazing and somewhat traumatizing because I was alone at one point in Tehran when there were riots and burned cars, and it was 1976, right before they, took down the Shah.
Wow.
And I was like trying to figure out street things as a 16-year-old and got myself on the right bus, got myself overnight in the hotel by myself and all. But, talking about PTSD, I'll smell diesel, I'm back.
Really?
And,
Yeah.
and I'm not attracted to big crowd scenarios. I kind of like, nope, that's not for me.
Yeah.
Uh, and so as I began to weave my life, each of those experiences was another cut that, you look back at your life and you say, these are good things and these are bad things. I began to sort of shuttle the bad things away, stuff them
Hmm.
down, didn't want to talk about them, didn't want to mention them.
Right.
And it wasn't until many years later that I began to realize, wait, deep breath. Some of these painful things, these bad things gave me honey to my heart, actually made me more compassionate to the fate of other people.
Yeah.
And these other things gave me resilience and fortitude. What I like to say is gave me strength to my sword arm, And
Sword
so
arm. Yeah.
yeah, like, so why would I separate? If you think about it, every billiard ball click has brought you, Cameron, to right where you are, and me, Peter, right here, and your listeners to wherever they are in their lives.
Yeah.
And rather than selecting in the video store of our lives the good videos rather than the bad, how did I own all of those? And begin to take ownership for everything that's happened. In fact, value everything that's happened for what did
Hmm.
I learn from that? And so I wrote this book as a way to go back and say, we all live epic lives. So why are we not celebrating and like phenomenally happy
Right.
all the time for what we've survived and what we have yet to contribute?
Yeah.
And so I stumbled in grad school on the heroic journey model.
Okay.
Joseph Campbell, I'm sure you're familiar with it. Many of your listeners are, where there's somebody leads, goes out and has a huge experience and comes back changed.
Hmm.
And so when I saw that, I did my graduate thesis on that, and I thought, this is actually the first map of my life that I've ever seen. Like, growing up in the East Coast and New York area, I was like, is there a playbook? Is there a manual? Like, how do we do this life thing?
Right.
No, you got to figure it out.
Hmm.
And
Trial and
so
error.
most of my life has been figuring it out with a machete, like
Yeah.
trying to figure it out, and made a lot of mistakes and made some good successes. But so the book is really about looking at the heroic journey. What are the challenges? What are the calls to adventure? How do I
Hmm.
prepare for those? What are the guardians of the gate or the barriers that push me back? What is the road of challenges that each one of those things I said yes to was hard at some point,
Hmm. Yeah.
really hard. And then there's an accomplishment. And then what did I get from that that I can come back to the top of the circle again and begin
Yes.
to say, you know what? I'm ready for the next challenge. And also, and then I'll stop here, but that, there's allies in every quadrant of that circle that helped me go on that first journey,
Yeah.
helped me in the road of challenges when I was in my dark night of despair,
Hmm.
helped me in the reentry because we're all like in our heads coming back thinking, oh, that was an easy thing to do. And bam, you flap into the guardians of the gate again.
Yeah.
And then how do you come back from military experience or a health challenge or a divorce to your community? because people generally don't know how to bring people back from experience very well. They
Right.
minimize it, they don't understand it, and so we tend to stuff it. And we're
Mhm.
like, I'm fine," when we're not fine.
Right.
And so the book is not the epic of Peter, it's the epic of you and your listeners to begin to recognize, look at the epic life we are all living,
Mhm.
and now let's build from that.
Yeah. I agree with you. I used to only want to claim the good things in my life and, just
Yeah,
push the other stuff away. But since my injury, for a long time, it's just a long, long process. Like even starting out at the top, it's like, if I'm not a police officer, who am I now? Like
yeah,
losing your identity and like, how could
sure,
this happen to me? How could I be so stupid? The guilt, the shame. And then you start getting back up and you keep moving, you keep moving. And before you know it, someone's asking you how you did it. And then you're here and then you're here. And then you're like, how did I even get here?
right.
And it's just, time does help, day after day,
Yep,
just putting in the work. But it's pretty amazing. You can be celebrated in public for the things you practice in private. And so if
yep,
you're working on yourself in private, it's going to show up in public eventually. But it belongs to you. That's the coolest part. I think a lot of times we try to like become something to be recognized. And then when
yep.
we become that thing, we're so proud that we've become that thing. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. It's so funny. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah,
I don't know, I get caught up in that. But I agree with you. It's amazing. We can turn our biggest wounds into some of our greatest gifts because
totally,
they're what
totally.
taught us you know, the lessons that we needed to learn, although they were painful, we come out of it if we allow ourselves a better human being. So, anyways, that just really clicked for me. But so let's hear about your creek, your adventure that you're going to talk about today.
Yeah, well, the creek, I think, was the river of our lives,
Okay.
and
Okay.
various points along the way
Hmm.
that were like those moments of, "Ugh, I can't keep living like this," you
Yeah.
know? There are points when I was in New York where the demons of those self-doubt demons were so loud that I had to go into a subway between the cars and ride between the cars like, this dragon surfboard of screeching, and I would just do, yelling and just
Wow.
release. And then we get to the station, I'd come back into the car, everybody's looking at, "Where were you?" You know? "Oh, I was
Yeah.
riding the trains." But, it was one of those things where I had to let the screams out, those demons.
Yeah.
And, I was working carpentry one time on a window ledge up in a upper apartment in New York City and saw somebody sunbathing on a rooftop, and I had this consciousness that she says, "Come on over." And I'm looking at how far is it between buildings? Could I make the jump? Could I jump
Yeah.
to that water tower, that's those wooden water towers in New York City? And I was like, yeah, it's about 30 feet, but I'm up high enough so I could probably get to that one. And then from that, get to the next fire escape. Like my mind was doing that stuff.
Yeah.
And and you begin to realize, God, what's the Thanatos? That there's Eros, of which we're here to love, and the Thanatos is that desire to die. And I think part of it is those opportunities that are choices in the road all the time of, do I choose hope and life and faith, or do I start looking towards the exit signs?
Wow,
And
that's powerful. Because that's
and those
happening without conscious thought. It's
right,
like it's happening in the background, but you don't realize you're like,
right,
worst case scenario, I die. Who cares? It's like that wasn't part of my thought process. It was like, I'm just going to do this
right.
jump. It's going to be awesome. But I didn't realize the line I'm dancing. That's
Yeah,
very
yeah.
interesting.
And I took risks at a kid, like crossing the bridge. I used to climb also the gymnasium had these chimney, like brick walls that were close together that you could put your feet up and back.
Yeah, I remember.
I was 7th grade. I was 80 feet high, nothing to hold on to. Got to the roof, aluminum panning, pull myself over to get a gym ball down, and then you
Man.
jump 12 feet from the other side. And it's like my palms still sweat when I think of those things as a kid, like we survived our childhood. And it doesn't, the epic of our lives doesn't have to be, oh, I did Everest or I ran the rapids.
Right.
One of the things that I've learned as I looked at my life is that I was a single parent dad for a while with 2 kids,
Yeah.
and there were those days when we'd go to the public laundromat and we'd throw the laundry in, and I'd do the cartoon books and the homework with the kids in the laundromat and snacks, and then you take the clothes from the laundry wash machine into the dryer.
Mhm.
And now you got 45 minutes in the dryer to entertain the 2 kids in a public grubby laundromat, you know?
Mhm.
And then you grab the clothes out of the dryer and they're still wet. It was broken, you know?
Oh,
And so now it's a school night. It's the middle of winter in February in Minnesota, and you're taking all the wet clothes back into the car with your 2 kids in car seats, back to the apartment because you're a divorced single parent, and you're like, "Ah!" And yet those are epic moments.
yes,
And
yes.
I think of all your listeners, they've all lived those moments where they're showing up for their kids. They're showing up at a job that they're not getting fulfilled from. And I want to call that out to people that are you seeing where you were epic? Are you seeing where you didn't give up? You showed up. You were kind to the person who needed change in the laundromat while you were being epic with your kids.
Right.
And and so there's lots of those types of stories I really want to call out for everyone else to feel the epicness of their own lives.
Absolutely. That's major. We obviously don't I don't know why we don't see ourselves in that way, but we can see other people in that way really quick. We can put them on a
Right,
pedestal, but we're down here. That was
right,
a big thing for me. I always felt like I was less than. Um, and then somewhere in the last like 5 years, I developed or absorbed the message that I'm no better than anyone else, which means they're also not better than me. We're on a level
right.
playing field, and we don't see life that way. And we also don't see life, a successful life, having challenges. So I think when we
Right.
like see a challenge in our lives that we work the equation, we're like, I'm screwing up. This isn't going the way
Yeah,
it's supposed to go. And then, like
right,
you, there is no program, there is no manual, there is no book or anything like that. Everyone's on their own adventure. And that's kind of a
right,
beautiful thing. If you see it that way, it's an adventure compared to always telling yourself, when I get the next job, I'll be enough.
right.
When I find the next woman or man, I'll be enough. Or if when that sort of stuff, and then you get it, and the feeling doesn't shift because it wasn't a
Right,
real equation.
right. Yeah,
Compared to even the guy who went into the job and didn't get the job, comes out with a great story. You know what I mean? Like, if they're able to do it, they're like, "That was a crazy interview. I didn't get the job, but I did get better at
yep,
this and that, and got so
yep,
much better at, like, telling this part of the story, and he grilled me on this question. I didn't have an answer, and then now you have an answer to that question for the next time." So it's like
yep,
continuous learning that somehow we've started casting shade on ourselves if we don't know everything, which is
right.
ridiculous. We obviously don't know everything. Obviously, there's so much more that I don't know than I know. If
Yeah,
I knew everything, I wouldn't I would have fixed myself a long time ago, right? Like a
right.
long time ago. So
Yep,
something that you said, and I know that feeling when you're in the heat, kind of like when you're in the fire or something's just happened, you're coming home with the wet clothes or something like that. And you have that moment of feeling like, I can't do this. I'm not enough. That sort of feeling. That's a very core, raw feeling that a lot of us feel, but never share.
right.
Um, wow. How did, when you were in those moments, if you could, wa did you use any tools or paddles to kind of keep yourself going or keep yourself focused on the right things compared to the wrong things?
Yeah, well, even as you were saying that, I was seeing the flow of our lives. Early on, I like to say I had the disease of comparison. Like
Mm,
I compared myself to everybody as a kid in school, in college.
yeah,
They have more money. They have, uh, better hair,
yeah,
like whatever. There's our society teaches us the wrong stuff. If at birth, Cameron, they said to you, guess what? You're an experiment of one. Go out there and have an amazing life. We would have learned early on that it wasn't about comparison. It was about, wow, that's a cool guy. Look what he's doing. Look what
yeah,
she's doing. But we're not. We're even on Facebook and all of social media. We're comparing, look what they're eating. Look at their vacation. Even LinkedIn. Wow, look at all the adulation they're getting on LinkedIn. And
mm,
it's become ooh, am I enough everywhere we go?
Yeah.
And
Big
one of the
time.
messages for me is like, stop. That is not the right narrative.
Mm,
We are an experimental one. Compare yourself to no one except what's the best version of you that you can create, and go out
mhm.
there and be that fully.
Yeah.
Learn how to do everything from how to sail a boat to chop wood to fix a car to, you know, everything, just everything you can possibly learn, go do it. Learn languages.
It's a great feeling to go for something. You know what I mean? To actually go for it because you're excited and you want to do it compared to letting that outside sense of what if someone sees me? What if I screw it up? That sort of
Right.
thing. Like you talked about social media. I remember glamour shots growing up in the mall,
Yeah. That's
and you
right.
go up to
Yeah.
the mall and you get a picture taken and like everything would be all glamorous. People are still doing the same thing, but doing it on their own on Facebook. So I'm
Yeah, the
taking my
selfie.
terrible day and I'm comparing it to your crown, which isn't even
Right,
real. So it's like
right.
I'm screwing with my own head. So truly, what's the best thing to do about social media for me is stay
Yeah,
off of it.
yeah. Well,
Honestly, for me, I get caught up in it and I have to grab myself and be like, this isn't real.
right. Well, so that's a paddle. So that's
Yeah.
one of those paddles that says, start saying no to stuff that
Hmm.
doesn't evolve me.
Yeah.
And one of my early paddles was stopping drinking and drugging. I
Awesome.
was 22 years old. It wasn't like I had a really bad bender, but I'd had enough bad things that had happened, and I
Yeah.
could see the downward spiral of where I was going.
Yeah.
And so I had families who were drinkers, and they came into the program of AA and 12 steps, and I didn't want it. So I went out harder for the next year. And then finally I had to surrender.
Yeah.
And that was one of those moments too, where I said, I cannot keep doing this. Or if I do, I'm not going to get to anywhere better. In fact,
Right.
I heard a guy in the program in New York one time said, if I hadn't become an alcoholic, I wouldn't have become much of anything. you
Mm.
know, and which is a great phrase to
Yeah.
remind us that that actually is in your way. And
Yeah.
so it's like taking the leaves off the pool. Get the stuff that's distracting you out of the way so that we can start doing the work on ourselves.
Yeah.
And then we eventually can get to the no to social media,
Yeah.
other addictions that get in our way, distractions.
For sure. That's an important point with social media that, I'm learning even more and more that it is addictive. It is a dopamine hit and that you're doom scrolling to try to get that dopamine hit. But as you doom scroll, you're actually getting depressed. So it's like a weird thing that's happening there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, yeah, there's more going on than just like, I want to see a picture. It's like chemicals, stuff like that. And you see people all day on their phone nowadays.
Yep.
If they get
Yep.
any idle time, phones out, staring down. It's
Yep.
it's a little shocking. I've even caught myself like watching TV, but I've got my phone in my hand. I'm like,
Yep.
why do I have my phone in my hand? I'm not doing anything
Checking a
on it.
message. Checking.
Yeah,
Oh, there's another one. Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, I think it's really important to talk about the person who's in that moment suffering, the one who's having those core feelings of, I'm not enough. I can't do this. My family deserves better. Sometimes that comes up, you know what I mean? Especially for me. And those can lead to dangerous avenues. Um,
Yep.
what would you suggest to a person who's in that moment feeling the feels? Because that's when they're really coming. Is
Yep.
is there anything that you would suggest they could do in that moment to kind of give themselves a little space from it or separation?
Yeah, I'd invite you to watch the TED Talk too that I did. It's called "Developing Your Heroic Journey Mindset" by Peter Bailey, and
Yeah.
I tell the whole thing around the heroic journey and the downward spiral I went, and my wife's cancer journeys. My wife had throat cancer,
Oh, wow.
and vegetarian, non-drinker, non-smoker. Like, whoa, how did you
Whoa.
get it? I like
Right.
cigars now and then. Like, how did you get throat cancer?
Right.
And one of the things that I watched her do was to not just recognize the heroic journey circle, but to show up with a heroic journey mindset. And this is actually going to answer your question here, because what she did was during that process, they realized the radiation and chemo for her throat was going to make it so irradiated, she wouldn't be able to eat. and they would need to do a peg tube, which is a IV bag of food directly into her stomach.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "No, I can do it without that." And she had to get a port for the infusions, and she said, "No, I'd rather just do it through the main veins and all." And she looked at the fear in my face, and I was like, "Ah, you can't eat, you know?" And she said, "All right, I will take the port and the peg tube, but I'm gonna rename them.
Mm.
And I'm gonna name the peg tube, the port power and the peg tube purpose. And now I have power and purpose as my allies to get through this next challenge." So,
That's great
yeah,
stuff. That's great stuff.
it is. And it's like,
That is like a
I get
champion, a
choked up.
hero. Yeah.
It is. And
Yeah.
so each person who's in that point of fork in the road of pattern interrupt, call upon allies, call upon things that will make you more powerful. And even at
Mm.
the end of the TED talk, I said, when you hear yourself say, "I can't do this," I invite you to add in dot, 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 until now, because
Until
you
now.
can. And
Yeah.
each of us have been through, if we recognize the past epic things we've gotten through and we're still alive, dude, you've got an amazing series of stories that you have, no matter what's coming down the pike at you, you can go back to, wait, look what I've been through already. I can get through this.
Yeah.
So if anybody is at that point, I guarantee them that they have been through harder
Yeah.
and they will be able to get through this next thing. In fact, because of all that preparation, you are now more ready to get through that than you ever were. That was
Yeah.
like a training. This
Yeah.
is real time. Go.
Yeah. And what about the person who's dying from 1,000 cuts and they feel like it just keeps coming and coming? It's like, is my luck bad? Does God hate me? And it's just
Yeah.
cut and cut. And it can get kind of like, it can get in your head. Like, is this what life is going to be forever? Cut after cut after cut.
Right.
I'm kind of hearing you suggest that those are opportunities. Although they suck, they're opportunities for growth and they keep coming, keep leaning into them. Is that kind of like something that,
Yeah, and I would say also, like, early in the program, that idea of, we don't hit bottom until we stop digging,
mm,
And so when you are ready, like, nobody can come in, before they're ready.
right.
So all those thousands of cuts, we did them to ourselves
Yep.
again and again until we reach that point of surrender. It's like, I think I'm done. I
Yeah.
think I'm done.
Because
And
prior
then
to that, it's really weird. We're like guys like me and you are willing to be like, yeah, it hurts. I'm good at taking pain. You know what I
yeah,
mean? It's like
right,
really
right.
weird. It's like, oh, you're telling me to stop and it's going to be painful. I'm good at pain. Watch me
Yeah,
go. You know what I mean? And then
yeah,
you lean into
right.
something that's destroying you to prove that for me, I have alcoholism that runs in my family. So I was told from a very young age, you may have the alcoholic gene. I'm like, not me. And I heard you kind of
Yep,
say that earlier too, like, not me. So I
yep,
pushed against it instead of taking caution. I don't know why I
right.
had to do that. But again, for me, I knew that alcohol made me feel better. I didn't understand until I went into Alcoholics Anonymous that my experience with alcohol may be different than the normal, not normal, the intended experience of alcohol. It does something different to me. It's more elating. It makes me feel better. My problems are
Yep.
out the window. I feel better about myself. I feel more confident, all these kinds of things, right? So alcohol was good for me. And then when I got rid of alcohol, it was so I didn't die from it, but I thought life was gonna be terrible. I was like, "Life is
Yeah.
gonna be boring, it's gonna be
Yep.
bleh for the rest of my life, but at least I won't die sober." And now once you do the work and you work, because that's what AA is. It's not actually like just getting sober, it's like working on yourself. One of the
It's the
first things
beginning.
is yeah, is writing a list of character defects about yourself. Most
Right,
people, prior to coming into the door, have been like, "There's nothing wrong with me." Everyone
right.
else is screwed up. So you get these challenges of self growth, and until you do them and take the
Yep.
initiative, nothing changes. But when you do and you write down all the things that, might be character defects, you get to go through it with someone and be like, yep, me too, me too, me too. This is what I did. this is what I did. This is what he did. This is what she
Yep.
did, all that kind of stuff. And you start to grow from what these problems were. You know what I mean? They actually identify the points of growth. It's pretty interesting. And it can work for anybody. I had a buddy go into the AA program after I did, and he called me up and basically said they should be teaching this in high school. What I mean? They should be teaching every kid how to get their shit together. It's not about drinking. It's about, being
Yep.
accountable, saying if you're going to do something, do it, and not just kind of flaking out all the time and committing to things. And it feels good living that way. It's actually a better experience living that way than just like,
Totally.
today sucks. Can't wait till tonight when I pop the cork, because
Yeah.
that's what
But
some people are doing. They're just, and that's what I was doing. Anytime I didn't feel good, I'd hit the vodka and it'd be like my timeout button. I'd be like, not
yep.
today. Boom. But the problem
Yep.
doesn't go away. It's still waiting for you tomorrow. So,
Right.
you get caught in a cycle. We did a jail talk. I went in and talked to some people who are in a recovery program in jail, and they're also getting taught skills. And one of the guys said something so profound. He said something to the effect of, I used to think like running and gunning, drugging and drinking, that was my comfort. But because I made it my comfort, it became my trap. So it just
Yeah.
became a full
Nice.
cycle of repetitive stuff.
Yep.
And then once he figured that out through the program, he's like, I've got a better idea of what, should be happening now. Not everyone's got their own road and they apply their lessons when they want to apply them and when they're ready. And usually that's rock
Yeah.
bottom because it's a great foundation to build a new life on. But it's tough. You just got to be real with yourself. I think for a long time, and I know I'm kind of rambling. I think for a long time, though, I thought, all right, I get through high school, I graduate college, and that's pretty much when I get like the blessing. You're a man, you're a grown up, you're an adult. And I think some people believe that, and then they get there and they almost plateau. They're like, I've
Yeah.
done enough. I am who I am. There is nothing to grow here. When
Right.
really there's so much more. In every part of life, there's a new stage, a new growth, a new lesson, a new role you play, going from being a
Totally.
kid learning to being the older guy teaching, all this kinds of stuff. But anyways,
Yeah.
this is good stuff. I really like that. And I will say one more thing. Your wife taking the power back and saying, I'm going to name this, what were they? Was it Power and Purpose?
Power and purpose.
Yeah, Power and Purpose. That is amazing. Everyone listening, if you just heard that, that was a person who did that, who was suffering and going through something scary and was comforting their loved one. Imagine now that you've heard that, what you're able to do for a person in your life who might be suffering and you feel helpless. It's kind of in that way, sort of taking the power back. Let's name this something. Let's name this something. This is our
Right.
journey. That's so
Right.
interesting compared to like, I'm one of a billion being treated for the same thing. It's like, no, this is my ride. I'm going to be
Right.
here day after day. That is powerful. And I hope people out there implement
Tanya
that.
Powerful.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna, that's what I'm gonna do if I ever come into a situation like that. I could have used
Yeah.
that with my dad when he was in and out of the hospital. Be like, this
Yep.
isn't a catheter. This is a, I don't know. I'd say P tube
Power and purpose,
or
This
Power and
this
Purpose.
is an
Yeah.
ally. You need this ally.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I like it.
Well, going back to that cleaning house thing, one of the things I heard early on in the 12-step program was a guy sitting up at the front of the room who says, I have a disease that's trying to kill me. It'll
Hmm.
settle for getting me drunk, but at the very least will keep me uncomfortable 24 hours a day.
Hmm. Yep.
And I was that kid growing up with that uncomfortability, which
Yeah.
I was masking with whatever to distract myself. And when I
Yeah.
finally came into AA, it helped me to realize that, as you said, it's stopping drinking is part of it. My sponsor, John R. from Connecticut, used to say, if you sober up a horse thief, all you have is a sober horse thief. Now you got to get the horse thief out of them. You
That's
know?
that's really good. That's
And
really,
so
really
my
good.
life, I have 43 years of sobriety now, and
Wow.
it's like, you know what? I've been spending the last 40 some years getting the horse thief out of me, you know?
That makes a
And
lot of sense. I don't know if
yeah,
you have to have alcoholic mind like mine to get that. That makes total sense. You don't
Yeah.
remove the substance and everything sorts itself out. You remove the substance and then start working and
So that
start
you
doing the
can.
things. Yeah.
Yeah,
You
right.
can't. It's yeah, it's the way to go. A lot of times so when I first got shot and I was going to a psychiatrist, the psychiatrist said to me, I think in the first appointment, I can do one of two things. I can give you medicine to numb you out, or I can give you medicine to stabilize you so you can work on the problems. What do you want to do?
Right.
And I
Mhm.
actually picked stabilize me so I can work on the problem. Um,
Nice.
I wanted to change it afterwards, but
Can I go back?
but you know, the I've seen a lot of people and I do take meds now to stabilize myself and just make sure I'm on point
Yep.
doing my things and staying
Yep.
staying level. But yeah, it's funny how much more there is to learn about ourselves and how much that information helps us live a better life.
Yep.
It
Yep.
might be contrary to the way we're living, which could hurt, but if we implement it, it could make life actually more enjoyable.
Well, and to your point, I think we know when we're struggling. I have a thing I wrote about in the book, The Epic of You. I call them rumble strips. You know, when you're driving along the road and you start veering off and go, "Did, did, 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 did,
Yep.
did, did, did." It's like, you know what? Even in our own lives, we know when I'm hitting the rumble strips of my life.
Yeah.
Too much coffee, too much nicotine, too much no sleep, like
Yeah.
jacking myself into places where it's not going to be healthy.
Right.
And those are rumble strips. So, like, it's not a bad thing. Just notice it and gently come on back, come on back. And when those folks are in those bottoming out moments, we know when you know, we know when we're uncomfortable. We know, and probably we even know what I need to do about it.
Yeah.
But I remember I took a course years ago, and it was one of those, encounter groups, and at the front of the room was a big sign, and it said, "What are you pretending not to know?" Day 2, it was the same sign, only 10 times bigger, "What are you pretending not to know?" And then the 3rd day, all the way around the room, "What are you pretending not to know?"
Oh.
And it finally got it like a 2 by 4. I know what I need to do, and I'm pretending I don't, you know?
Mm, yeah. The way you just explained that, I mean, I think we all get caught up in that. And we explain it in so many different ways. One is like,
Yeah,
I'm afraid to start. What do they think? But it's like something internal. You know what I mean? It's like, and what's
right,
weird is until you do it, you keep ramping up. And it's
right,
like we live in this anxiety until the last second, and then we're just like, well, I'll just do whatever I can. And then you just go straight
right.
at it. Um, yeah.
Or F it, the short version of the serenity prayer,
Yes.
whatever, Yeah, you can always jump off the edge. You can always end it.
Yeah.
And yet it's harder not to.
Yeah.
And yet it gives us a chance to live a better life, which is actually why we're here.
Hmm.
And I love when you said too about what are you doing for the loved ones around you?
Hmm.
And how can you make living with me more comfortable by taking the horse thief out, by
Yeah.
working on me as the daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of a spiritual condition. How
Wow.
can I begin to honor that and do the right thing?
Yeah.
So my book talks about that. It talks about choices. How do I begin to see the choices ahead of me and really look at my degree as an experiential ed, the maturation of our choices.
Right.
How do I get better choices so that I have better choices? And
Hmm.
and that's something that getting sober, getting the out of that way, boy, I just tenfold improved my choices, you
Yeah.
know? And yeah, I'm probably better than this job, but I'm gonna do it because that's gonna improve my choices,
Yeah.
And relationships, is this the right one for me? I've been divorced twice now. On my 3rd, very happily with Tanya, it's going well,
Awesome.
but I had to improve who I was in these relationships so that
Yeah.
I could actually live the life I wanted to live, and that's a process.
And it's safe to say you wouldn't have learned these lessons without going through those experiences, including the divorces. You were
Yeah,
able to, instead of say, screw that person, I'm right, you're wrong, you're like, you were able to kind of look at yourself and be like, where could I have, or where
right,
can I grow? and
Yep.
implement that in the next place so you're growing from it. That's so huge. I think people
Yep.
forget that information's there. Because it's about emotion. It's too hard sometimes to handle the feelings that or the responsibility or the whatever it may be that you contributed to maybe the relationship breaking up. Obviously not talking about you, just in general.
Yeah.
And we kind
Yep.
of want to think, I'm right, you're wrong, you're stupid, I'm smart. And then you go talk to people about how stupid and dumb they are and like all that kind of stuff when nothing's really happening. And it almost shows if you think about that, saying that out loud sounds like you're trying to not twist the situation, but shape it so it serves you. You're not
Right.
you're the
Right.
victim versus the
Yep.
perpetrator, and they're wrong. And the next time I find a guy or girl, he or she needs to be like this to understand and get me, compared to, is there anything I could do better here? And
Yeah.
that's
I was the common denominator, so hello.
That's another one. What's the saying? It's like, basically if four people tell you something, that maybe you should think about what they're saying or something like that.
Right.
Yeah, because there
Right.
might be truth to it that you can't see. Or
Yep.
and what was the saying you were just saying? What is it that you're
What are
refusing
you
to it?
pretending not to know?
What are you pretending not to know? Oof, that's deep. That's
It
a
kinda
that's a
is.
driving in your car alone kind of like
Yeah.
deep, like walk
Yep.
deep, like, whoa, what could this be?
Yeah, and I'm an executive coach, so I can coach you in a fabulous development of your life. But for me to coach myself, I'm not very good at answering my own questions. And so this is where that kind of a banner really hits me between the eyes because I have to hold myself accountable.
Yeah,
What am I pretending not to know in this relationship, in this work situation, in my relationships with people?
yeah,
And going
yeah,
back to the experiment of one, how do you want to live this life? You and I get a choice today, starting now. And even in the book, I'll say, hit yourself 3 times in your chest and say, done with that. Start making intentional movements on stop. I want to be done with that. And that's when we stop digging,
really. So
and
actually the physical action will help solidify the desire or whatever you're trying to do, like not again kind of thing. So it's like interrupting the pattern.
it does for me. I
Yeah,
came up with my own hack for hiccups was drinking vinegar. A spoonful of vinegar, I can interrupt my hiccups. So for me, a life hack, and you'll get thousands of psychotherapists will say though he's a quack. I'm not trying to sell anything, but for me, I came up with what's a thing that I can start doing for myself that will stop bad patterns.
yeah.
And
And
three
I'm
thumps
I'm
on my chest. Yeah, try it.
I'm I'm
Try it.
a and I'm more of like a physical person. So
Yeah,
like movement helps me think, you know what I mean?
totally.
Or
Yep.
like taps and stuff. That makes a lot of sense to me. I'm gonna
Yep.
implement that. I'm gonna see if
And there is some, anchoring with neuro-linguistic programming that you can do that when you're in a positive space, do the the finger pinch, like when you do golf or something. Wow, that was great. Pinch it. Hold yourself, like somatically, hold yourself in a point that will remind you that good feeling so you're back again.
all right.
There's a
That's gonna help
bunch
my
of
golf
stuff.
game. You- You're
Yeah, there you
you're
go.
you're helping me all over the place. My golf
Right and
game,
left.
my relationships, my helping people who are hurting, helping people who
Yeah.
are watching me hurt by taking
Yeah.
the the edge off the blade by, power and purpose, and that's just beautiful. That's so amazing. And Peter, what would you say to the person, since you're out of the creek or that creek? And I know we go into so many, and that's basically where we learn. But what would you say to the person who's feeling that feeling of, I can't do this forever. This is hopeless. I'm stuck in this mud. There's no getting out. I'm going to give up.
Right. Well, I love when you said, I'm out of that creek. I am not done getting into creeks because,
Right. Yep.
I'm 66 years old. I've 45 years in a career. I'm at sort of that wave of, okay, what's my transition now?
Cool.
And there's a lot of people out there, last of the baby boomers, who are whew, how do I make sense of this life and what's next? I'm not going to be wandering around Arizona golfing,
Right.
I'm probably going to need to figure out what's my next purposeful life.
Yeah.
And so go back and sort of, physician heal yourself. Where am I on this new heroic journey? And so what is my preparation mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually? What do I need to do to get out of this mud hole?
Okay.
And full confession, I have stopped physical activity and exercise for whatever reason. And I know, what am I pretending not to know? I got to do that again because I'm deteriorating every day at
Hmm.
66. So I used to be an athlete, used to rock climb and everything.
Right.
Arthritis is kicking in. I have got to get back into that. Why am I delaying that? So get back, figure that out, get back into
Yeah.
it and use the tools of the heroic journey, particularly around who are your allies. So if you are in the mud hole right now, when you really truly want to surrender, is there a spiritual source you can reach to? Are there human people who are in your circle who you can reach to
Yeah.
help you? And I truly believe that when we are intentional about getting out of our own mud holes, the cosmos conspires on our behalf. It will start showing up for you. New job opportunities, new network connections, new people who come in who have a more positive outlook.
Hmm.
That does show up when we get clear on, I think I'm done. I
I
think I'm
totally
ready.
agree. I totally agree about things showing up almost like miracles.
Yeah.
And what's funny is I go into the stage where I want to understand it. How does this work? But the truth is there is no understanding it.
Don't
It's
worry about
just
it.
it's just keep
It
those
just
eyes
will.
open. Yeah, keep those
Yeah.
eyes open and ask to see the good around you. And that changes life too. Like I want to see the good today instead of just always seeing the bad stuff, the ugly. Because if that's all you're looking for, that's all you'll see. So you have to kind of
Right.
like key yourself back into, I'm going to look at good things today,
Yeah.
and make it purposeful. Yeah.
And it's world's a crazy day. I mean, here we are, April 14th, 2026. If you listen to this tape later on, you'll look back and say, the world is a mess right now.
Yeah.
And I could very easily downward spiral and never come out of a hole.
Yeah.
What we have to do is say, what are the good things around us that are happening? I'm in
Yeah.
Minneapolis, and what just happened in Minneapolis was amazing. The reaction to some of the negative energy that came to town.
Yeah.
They showed up with singing, they showed up with food groups, they showed up with circles, and there was no violence.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. So that is a possibility. I also like to look at the yin yang, that half black circle meeting the half white circle.
Yeah.
If you call it white or bad or black, whatever, it's never unbalanced. They're always even. So
Yeah.
despite the craziness of all that's happening, there is an equal balance of really good things if, like you just said, if I look for them, if I
Yes.
stop scrolling, if I stop watching news services, and if I turn closer to home and my community, where can I be a part of the good message going forward?
Absolutely. I believe that it's actually been not proven, but the news and everything you watch understands that yes, you like to watch things that give you a positive reaction, but you're just as likely to watch things that will give you a negative reaction.
Well,
And
perfect.
if that's the way things are going, when you turn the news on, regardless of what channel you're on, you're going to be shown what's bad. And it's going to make you feel like everything's bad and the whole world's going to crap. But you're right. You know what I mean?
Right.
Down the road from me is a retirement center. And I'm sure there's people in there every day, doing amazing things, loving with all their hearts and all that kind of stuff. And, it's just funny what you're clued into is what
Right.
your life will feel like. So if you're
Agreed.
looking at, hate and anger, not only will you feel that, but you may even start doing it to others because it seems
Yeah.
like what everyone's doing. You almost join in without even thinking about it. And we
Right.
absorb stories now that are like, they tell you something, you're like, oh my God, the world's over. But it turns out it's like a portion of the story mixed with another one, another one. So we're all kind of being led around. I'm with you. I had to stop watching the news. Like I had to stop
Yep.
watching the news.
Right.
I even had to stop listening to aggressive music because I would work out, when I was, and I would
Yeah.
listen to like aggressive stuff. I'm listening to like Tupac, I'm listening, like all this gangster stuff. And I'd come out and I'd be all hype. And my wife eventually was like, you come out of that gym like more worked up than you were in the gym. What's going on? I'm
Right.
like, nothing. She's like,
Right.
what are you listening to? I'm like, nothing,
Oh,
like country. She's like, what are you listening to? I'm like,
she's wise.
yes, she is very wise and knows how to ask a question without accusing or anything like that. She'll make you work your own way to the answer. And then you're like,
There you go.
oh
There you
no.
go.
But it works. I mean, it actually makes a difference. And especially if you've just come out of something, I think
Yep.
the closer you are to whatever experience it is you're working through right now, the harder it is to decipher between outside energies and your own.
Right.
So if you've got a friend who every day the world's on fire, doom, and they always come to you and talk about that, unfortunately, if you want to live in a positive place, you may have to adjust that relationship, in some way, or sometimes even walk away from them because you have to
Yeah.
choose you and the positive compared to always having to, defend yourself to a person who's trying to tear down the positive. Like,
Right.
I don't want to do that. It's not my responsibility to prove to you why I'm feeling positive. Like if you want to jump on board, jump on board. But, yeah, it's tough. Easier said than done, this life
Right.
of ours. Uh,
Right.
but Peter, it has been such a pleasure. I really, really appreciate you coming on. All your information is going to be in the description for your book, how to get a hold of you, and whatever
Right.
else on there. So if you guys want to reach out to Peter, please do so and tell him that you heard about him from the Shit Creek Survivor podcast. I'm sure he'd get a chuckle out of that.
That's great. Cameron, you got a new friend for life here. So thanks for doing great work,
Thank
getting
you.
messages of hope and people's epic journeys online like this. I think you're touching a lot of lives. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much. That means a lot. That means a lot. Because, like you said, sometimes other people can see it in your life, but you can't see it in your own, or like you
Yeah.
don't feel successful, what everyone else is like. That was the wrong word. You said something about it earlier. Other people can see stuff while you don't feel it. Something to that effect. But yes, we'll
Yeah.
keep going. And Peter, you have a friend for life. You're down in Atlanta. Give me a holler, and we'll take you out. Figure out what's going down. We'll hit an AA meeting in Atlanta. We'll go
There you
down
go.
there to like Grady Hospital and like go to a real rough one, and it'll be awesome. Those are some of the best
Cool.
meetings. So, again, thank you, Peter. Great having you. And until next time, God bless.
Thanks so much, Cameron. Take care.
Take care. Peter, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story, your wisdom, and the message behind the epic of you. What really stands out for me from this conversation is that our struggles do not have to define us. I know we've said that before, but the cool thing we learned today is they can actually shape us into something stronger, more aware, and more purposeful. And to everyone listening, if you're in a difficult season right now, I hope this reminded you that your story isn't over. There's still another chapter to be written. If you want to connect with Peter or check out the Epic of You, you'll find the links in the description. And as always, if you found any value in this episode, please like, subscribe, share. Every like, every subscription, every share helps us keep this conversation going and reaching the people who need it the most. So until next time, keep paddling.